Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. My book, Cassandra Killjoy, Paranormal Private Eye, The Search for the Swordsman, is available on Amazon.com. You can buy your copy right now by following the link in the description box. And for more information, feel free to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Enjoy the video. There's only one proper way to begin this. The city of Townsville, a cesspool of crime and villainy. A city that needs heroes, benevolent guardians who... yeah, his show ended. No, I'm talking about brave, daring heroes of the fairer sex and... She doesn't even have her own show, come on! No, I'm talking about a team of misunderstood heroes who... Now, they're on a completely different network. What this city needs is a team of heroes made of sugar, spice, and everything nice, and maybe a little something extra added to the concoction. Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. I'm Erod, and I'm the Blockbuster Buster. And thank you so much for making my Legends of Fandom CW Powerpuff Girls video my most successful release of 2023. So, to express my gratitude, let's talk about the show that started it all. The city of Santa Clarita, California, the location of CalArts, where in the late 80s, a very skilled character designer named Craig McCracken was studying animation and producing an animated short starring a Mexican superhero he created called El Fuego. Around this time, the birthday of Bill, Craig's brother, was about to come up, so his mother suggested that he draw a birthday card for him. At the time, Craig was really into Margaret Keane paintings, so he decided to draw some cartoon characters with those signature Margaret Keane eyes. And thus, Craig McCracken created three of the greatest superheroes in all of fandom: Blossom, Bubbles, and Bud. Yes, as in Flower Bud. But that name never quite sat well with Craig McCracken, so his friend Miles Thompson suggested Buttercup. Craig loved these characters so much that he decided to replace El Fuego with these adorable preschool heroes for his animation project. Brave and bold crusaders made of sugar, spice, and everything nice. But Craig McCracken accidentally added an extra ingredient to the concoction: a can of whoop-ass. I'm not kidding, the original extra ingredient that was added to the concoction in the original short was a can of whoop-ass. In fact, their original team name was the Whoop-Ass Girls. Craig finished the aptly titled short Whoop-Ass Stew, and it went over really well with classmates and faculty. So much so that it was suggested that Craig pitch it as a show to Nickelodeon, who turned it down. Yes, Nickelodeon turned down Craig McCracken. Remember that. According to Linda Saminsky, who was the head of development for Nickelodeon at the time, Craig's short was good, and it was nothing personal. It's just that Whoop-Ass Girls didn't quite fit into the vision that they had for Nickelodeon at the time. But whatever the this is apparently did. After CalArts, Craig went to work for Hanna-Barbera as a designer on Two Stupid Dogs. It was at this time that he once again pitched the show, but to the studio that he was working for. And they liked it, so they greenlit it, but not as a show, as an animated short, to be featured on a new show called The What a Cartoon Show, a half-hour anthology series that would showcase original shorts from new animators, to be considered to be picked up as new series. And so, the first series to be picked up from The What a Cartoon Show was Dexter's Laboratory, which was created and produced by Craig's close personal friend Gendy Tartakovsky, who brought Craig onto Dexter as the art director. All the while, the head of the network promised to keep Whoop-Ass Girls in the highest of considerations. Craig ended up working on Dexter for 4 seasons, but in retrospect, this ended up being a blessing in disguise, as during this time, he learned everything he needed to know on how to run an animated show. And thus, in the late 90s, Cartoon Network was ready to create their second wave of original shows, with Whoop-Ass Girls being one of their top picks. There was just one little itty-bitty little problem. The network's investors blatantly ordered them to change the name. And thus, it was Paul Rudish and Zeke Cam that came up with the name that would strike fear in the hearts of criminals and giant monsters everywhere: the Powerpuff Girls.
Hey, that's a good name for them. Powerpuff Girls, yeah!
The plot.
In an effort to create the perfect little girl, Professor Utonium mixed sugar, spice, and everything nice, but accidentally added an extra ingredient to the concoction, Chemical X. And thus, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup were born. But they weren't just the perfect little girls, they were super-powered little girls, armed with speed, strength, flight, ice breath, the ability to talk to squirrels, and whatever the heck this is. You know what, I can't do it. Forever determined to fight crime and the forces of evil anytime they receive the call to action from the mayor of Townsville. And you better believe they will always save the day before bedtime.
Oh, sorry. Thanks to the Powerpuff Girls.
Character design and animation. The characters, of course, were designed by Craig McCracken himself, who made it a point to have the characters be made up of simple shapes, as a reference to classic cartoon characters, and because he didn't want his series to look like any other cartoon that was on TV at the time, which is the reason he resisted the many notes that he got to give the girls more human features, like ears, noses, and fingers. The animation was handled by the legendary Rough Draft Korea, who nailed the show's very eclectic blend of slapstick cartoon comedy and hard-hitting action.
But next time, girls, not so rough.
Oh, Fred.
Ow.
It is also important to note that this show had one of the greatest creative teams ever assembled, like Gendy Tartakovsky, Paul Rudish, Zeke Cam, Rob Rainzetti, Don Shank, and Lauren Faust. There are so many reasons this show was so well made. Cast and characters. According to Craig McCracken, he had a very specific spectrum when creating the villains, from most stupid to the most evil, and all the way at the very end of the stupid end of the spectrum, we have the Amoeba Boys, played by Lou Romano and Chuck McCann. Basically, they are the dumbest, most incompetent, and ineffective criminals in Townsville, evoking mob characters from old cartoons, but as amoebas. Why amoebas? Because they are single-celled organisms with no brains.
You gave them dolls?
You pinheads! You're not supposed to give them the dolls! The dolls are what you stick the needles in!
So, what's your point?
Sedusa, played by Jennifer Hale. She is your classic femme fatale, like Catwoman or Poison Ivy, often achieving her goals via seduction or manipulation. But when all else fails, there's always force. Fuzzy Lumpkins, played by Jim Cummings. A blatant parody of the Rainbow Bright villain Lurky, Fuzzy is part xenophobic hillbilly and part cryptozoic monster that lurks in the woods surrounding Townsville. He is the big dumb brute of the Rogues Gallery, like Killer Croc or Solomon Grundy.
Get your wrinkles off of my property!
Ace, Rubber, Snake, Arturo, and Big Billy, the Gang Green Gang, played by Jeff Bennett and Tom Kenny. Basically, they are the answer to the question, what if Big Daddy Roth designed Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids? The Gang Green Gang are your basic street-level thugs. They're not master criminals, nor do they have any aspirations outside of your basic disorderly conduct, petty theft, and destruction of private property. Inevitably, all of their schemes end with them receiving a knuckle sandwich and a side of potatoes. Princess Morbucks, played by Jennifer Hale. Based on Veruca Salt from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Princess is your stereotypical spoiled rich brat, who generally gets whatever she wants. Unfortunately, what she wants the most is to be a Powerpuff Girl, and she will do anything and everything to acquire her own ultra superpowers, and force herself onto the team whether the girls like it or not.
I've come to deliver you your Christmas present. A fourth and more powerful member of your team. Me, Princess!
Him, played by Tom Kane. He is the epitome of everything that is evil, a fiend so vile that his name can never be said out loud, or your head will explode. So he is simply known as him.
I assure you, I'll be back!
Inspired by the Blue Meanie and the Devil, him is at the opposite end of Craig McCracken's spectrum of villainy, as the most evil villain on the show. Basically, any time on the show they needed to raise the stakes, they would bring in him. Mojo Jojo, played by Roger Jackson. Yes, Ghostface from the Scream movies is also the voice of Mojo Jojo. God, I love voiceover. Based on Dr. Gory from Spectre-Man, physically inspired by Zaka Yasuda, and verbally inspired by Speed Racer's English dub.
I do not talk like that. The way I communicate is much different. I do not reiterate, repeat, reinstate the same thing over and over again.
On Craig's spectrum of villainy, Mojo is right in the middle. Evil but not too evil, dumb but not too dumb, which made him the most versatile villain in the show. Henceforth, the reason he is the one who appears the most, with 53 appearances throughout the franchise's original run. Also, he's the only villain on the show whose origin we get to see. In the episode Mr. Mojo's Rising, we learned that originally, Mojo was Professor Utonium's lab monkey, Jojo. And it was he who caused the accident that made the professor spill Chemical X into the concoction and create the Powerpuff Girls. Furthermore, it was that very accident that gave Jojo his super brain and green skin, and transformed him into Mojo Jojo. And that's not even the last time the petulant primate played a hand in the creation of the girls. In the episode Get Back Jojo, Mojo travels back in time to eliminate the professor before he creates the Powerpuff Girls. But inadvertently, Mojo creates an anthological paradox instead, as his time travel sets the events in motion that leads to the creation of the girls in the future.
It was me. It was me.
I always viewed this as the universe balancing itself. As long as there is a Mojo Jojo, there must also be the Powerpuff Girls.
I rock so hard.
Alright, let's flip to the other side of the coin and let's talk about the heroes. Starting with the mayor and Miss Sarah Bellum, played by Tom Kenny and Jennifer Martin. The mayor is basically Commissioner Gordon if he was an idiotic, worthless buffoon. Mayor literally does nothing important on the show outside of calling the girls whenever there's trouble. The true brains of the operation is the aptly named Miss Sarah Bellum, the mayor's assistant, whose face generally remains hidden, as her beauty overshadows her best feature, her brain, as she is the person who legitimately keeps the city running and often plays the role of surrogate mother for the girls.
Listen, girls, you're right about one thing. There is injustice in the world.
Professor Utonium, played by Tom Kane. Yes, the same actor who plays the most evil character on the show also plays the kindest and most compassionate. Like Geppetto, all the professor wanted was to have children, but due to the accident caused by Jojo, he ended up creating superheroes as well. As a character, he is like a nerdier, more lighthearted version of Dr. Venton Quest. He is both the loving father and the brilliant scientist who delivers the exposition and builds whatever the girls need to complete their missions. Ultimately, this man would do anything for his girls.
Can we talk about it, please? No, no!
All right!
And that's a wrap, Mr. Bernstein.
Professor, you did it!
Bubbles, played by Tara Strong. She likes to join in the laughter. She is the sweet, bubbly girly girl of the group, innocent, honest, and pure-hearted. But don't underestimate her. When the situation calls for it, she can also be hardcore. Buttercup, played by E.G. Daly, the toughest fighter. She is the hot-headed, hard-hitting tomboy of the bunch, and those who cross her will have to deal with her weapons of mass destruction, Fisty McGee and Punchy O'Flanagan.
And if any of them got a problem with it, they can take it up with Punchy McGee and Fisty O'Flanagan.
Fear her theory.
Now listen, Buttercup, it's not what you think.
Blossom, played by Kathy Capadini, the commander and the leader. She is the brilliant, outgoing, tactical expert of the team. When it comes to execution and strategy, very few can match the girl with the big red bow, which can often be misconstrued with her being overly bossy.
Alternate group plan attack G37. Ready. Hold it. We're not pulling no G37.
Seasons 1 and 2. While this show did have a strong sense of continuity, it didn't have any seasonal arcs or ongoing storylines. Most episodes were made up of two 11-minute segments, and the stories were pretty much self-contained, outside of the occasional sequel episode. The mission statement of the show was to hit the audience with as much fast-paced entertainment as possible. as the creators would pack as many jokes and action as humanly possible into every 11 to 22 minute segment. With that said, fans still divide the show into 3 distinct eras. The first 2 seasons are part of the pre-fame era. The show was just starting out. No one was expecting it to go past 3 seasons. And Cartoon Network was still in its edgy, irreverent phase, so very few restrictions or limitations were placed on the creative team. Hence, the reason why these are the seasons with the largest amount of adult humor.
And your hair gel, and cologne, breath mints, and cufflinks, and some of these.
When people talk about how edgy and badass this show was, generally speaking, this is the era that they are referring to. Notable episodes include Birthday Bash, where the girls are celebrating their birthday and the villains keep sending them deadly presents, one more dangerous than the last. And then there's my all-time favorite episode. The Powerpuff Girls' best rainy day adventure ever. During a rainy day, the girls are stuck inside, so they start playing pretend and play out an entire episode of the Powerpuff Girls via their imagination. Made all the more hilarious by the fact that they truly are the Powerpuff Girls. While this episode might be light on the ass-kicking action that the show is known for, it greatly services one of the most important elements the series is known for, that while the girls might be larger-than-life heroes, they are also children.
You gotta help us, and the faster you help us, the faster you can go back to work.
All right. Fly, 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 fly. Pow, bye, 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 bye.
And the day is saved.
Seasons 3 and 4.
Thus, we enter the show's post-fame era, as while Season 2 was being produced, the show blew up, becoming Cartoon Network's first runaway hit, garnering rave reviews and copious amounts of merchandise, especially the kind that was aimed at young impressionable girls, which greatly annoyed Craig McCracken, as his intention was to make a legitimate action show with 3 cute little girls at the center of it, not a commercial for makeup or hair accessories. The point is that from one season to the other, this show went from being an obscure action comedy on Cartoon Network to one of the most famous and recognizable shows on the planet. So now, all eyes were on the show. So even though the action, the humor, and the edge were still there, it was obvious that more restrictions and limitations had been placed upon the show, and it wasn't quite as raw as it was during the first 2 seasons. Not to imply that the show was bad, some notable episodes include the critically acclaimed Meet the Beatballs, Craig McCracken's overt and hilarious homage to the Beatles,
Mojo Jojo on blaster rays, the acidic spit stylings of him, Princess accompanying Mojo on blasters, and Fuzzy provides the rock,
and Film Flam, where a scummy Hollywood producer wants to make a Powerpuff Girls movie using the actual Powerpuff Girls. But the whole thing turns out to be a scam.
Look! See? No film in the camera. See? No film. There, I gotcha. You can't make a movie without film.
Which is the perfect segue to talk about the actual Powerpuff Girls movie. Released by Warner Brothers in 2002, the movie used the same cast and crew from the series to retell the girls' origin but with a big cinematic scale. This movie marked the first film adaptation of an original Cartoon Network property. And also the last, as the film was a colossal failure. The fact is that the odds were just against this movie. Computer animation was already starting to dominate the animated feature world. The Powerpuff Girls audience was predominantly made up of casual viewers, who were happy to stay home and watch the show as opposed to shell out money for movie tickets. And most notably, Warner Brothers foolishly released the movie the same weekend as Men in Black 2, which might not be a very good movie, but still had a more loyal theater-going audience. Now, as far as Craig McCracken's intentions for the film, he wanted to get away from the soft, girly, cutesy perception created by all the merchandise, and make the movie as badass and action-packed as possible. So much so that some critics accused the movie of being overly dependent on violence and shock value. And I just want to state, for the record, that those people are wrong, they're dumb, and they should never be listened to. This movie is awesome. It is a love letter to classic cartoons, superhero comics, and true girl power. It has some of the coolest shots created for an animated production, and the action sequences kick so much ass, they put most action movies to shame. In the end, this movie's failure was just a matter of bad timing.
Seasons 5 and 6.
After the movie, Mojo's design changed to resemble his cinematic counterpart, and the animation improved a lot.
Not only do I have a hostage, I have a camera too.
And thus, we arrive at the post-Creator era, as most of the original creative team left the show. Genndy Tartakovsky and Paul Rudish left to work on Samurai Jack. David P. Smith and Greg Miller left to work on Whatever Happened to Robot Jones. And Craig McCracken and Lauren Faust left to work on Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, leaving Chris Savino as the new showrunner. And while this show was never bad, during this era it just wasn't quite as good as it was during its first 4 seasons. And most of the episodes became pretty formulaic. One of the girls, if not all of them, would make some kind of a mistake that would get in the way of their crime fighting. They would then correct the mistake, learn a lesson, save the day, lather, rinse, and repeat. Now don't misunderstand me. Sometimes this formula works, like in the episode Curses, where the girls discover curse words, but they have no idea that what they're saying is bad. This is one of the funniest episodes in the entire show.
I can't believe this! You're such a... Baby! You're not nice!
What do you have to say for yourself?
Oh my.
And I would be hard-pressed if I didn't mention the most notorious episode in the series. See Me, Feel Me, Know Me, the musical episode. Now, the episode itself is fine, and it has one of the best opening sequences of the whole series. So why is it notorious? It was one of the most expensive episodes of the show, but some of the sequences ended up giving kids seizures, so the episode was pulled from circulation. But to make matters worse, to this day, the episode is still available on DVD and streaming without an epilepsy warning. So yes, please exercise the utmost caution when watching this episode.
Wanna get some? Wanna get some? Wanna get some?
Alright, it's time to talk about the Christmas special. Lauren Faust returned to co-write and direct the series' first and only Christmas special. 'Twas the Fight Before Christmas. The special sees Princess break into Santa's workshop and amend Santa's naughty and nice lists, putting herself on the nice list and the rest of the children of the world on the naughty list. So everyone gets coal in their stockings, and Princess gets what she always wanted: superpowers.
Wow, Santa! We didn't know you could give kids superpowers for Christmas!
No the rest.
So it's a race to the North Pole to set things right. Furthermore, this special has one of the greatest chase sequences you will ever see, running for just over 7 minutes. This sequence slaps, delivering high-octane, high-velocity, high-intensity, bone-crushing action all the way through, and somehow still slipping in the occasional joke and Star Wars reference. I love this special and I watch it every year.
Faster, it's too early!
We'll open presents later. Go back to bed.
And thus, after 137 episodes, a movie, and a Christmas special, Powerpuff Girls came to an end. Until 2008. For the 10th anniversary of the beloved series, Cartoon Network commissioned one more episode, The Powerpuff Girls Rule, which was crudely animated with flash animation, which sometimes worked but sometimes really didn't. But I digress. In the episode, the key to the world is up for grabs, and whoever holds it rules the world, which ignites an epic brawl between the girls and all of their enemies. Who gets the key? Who gets to rule the world? I dare not give it away, as it is one final hilarious twist to bid the fans farewell.
Final verdict.
At a time in the late 90s when a lot of people were disingenuously claiming to stand for girl power, very few actually stood for it, like the Powerpuff Girls. This show gave us badass female superheroes who never had to sacrifice their femininity or their innocence to save the day. The Powerpuff Girls were just as legitimate as Wonder Woman or Captain Marvel. And while most shows about kids saving the day are horrendously annoying, Craig McCracken gave us a series that was always charming, funny, and entertaining, all the while never forgetting that our heroes were children. And thus, as per usual, the day is saved. Thanks to the Powerpuff Girls. 10 points on their badassitude meter. Don't spill the Chemical X. Grab yourself a pickle and give it a watch. Until next time, I'm Erod, and I'm the Blockbuster Buster.